Welcome back to Virtual School Assembly. Today we have Daniel Knudsen, who is a filmmaker from Detroit, Michigan. He's worked in the film industry for the past decade and a half and has produced or directed 10 feature films. He recently starred alongside former Superman actor Dean Cain in the upcoming movie Skydog. We're so glad to have you on the show. Daniel, welcome.
Well, Tyler, thank you so much for inviting me. It's really good to be here. Yeah, I got involved with film when I was in high school. I was really interested in the storytelling industry. I loved movies, TV, and it fascinated me that there are real people that make the content that you see on TV and that you see in the theater. And thinking about that, I was like, that's something I want to be involved with. Now, this was before kind of cell phones and iPhones that filmed, and it was before the major technological revolution. Actually, while I was in college, there was this little website that was invented. I went to Thomas Edison State University, which is a school in New Jersey, and there was this little website that got extended out beyond schools, universities just in the Northeast there, and it was invented by this guy at Harvard, this website called the Facebook. And my cousin from New Jersey was on it, and her boyfriend was on it at the time. So then I got on. I think I had 6 friends, and then of course it exploded into what it is now. So the technology has changed a lot, making filmmaking and visual storytelling a lot more accessible. So I still love doing this, and I think it's a fun hobby that anyone can be involved with now. If you have a phone, just a little cell phone takes sometimes great video that we can put content on social media. So now the trick is trying to make content that's compelling.
Right. Now, Daniel, so you've been involved in the film industry for a long time. How did you actually get in? I know a lot of kids are wondering, how do I break into the business? Or like, what were the things that you did maybe in high school or way back in the day that kind of got you into this medium and into the industry?
Good question. So I had a friend who was in Florida. He was just north of Orlando, and he was involved with a film production company, and he was producing movies. And so then I interned for 2 summers, one summer I think when I was 17, and then the next summer when I was 18 there in Florida. And that's kind of how I got involved with doing films. And this particular individual, his name is Josh Walsh. He just recently produced the movie, I think he was involved with, he'd been producing with a group called the Irwin Brothers, and they did the movie I Can Only Imagine. They just did a movie called I Still Believe. They've been doing some of these big musical biopic type movies. But yes, I was on his first movie back in 2004 in Florida. So I would say if you want to get into movies, try to link up with someone who's already involved with doing productions, and then you can probably ask to either get on set or volunteer, try to become a production assistant, and might be an odd job doing all different kinds of work. It might be carrying equipment or getting coffee for people or things like that. But if you can really get on a set, you're going to meet other people who really work in the industry. So that'd be one way. Another way would be to sign up to be what we call in the industry background talent. The old term used to be extras, but that's less politically. It's kind of becoming more politically incorrect to just say extras. So now we call them background talent, which basically means being an extra. You can be one of those people in the scene that's sitting in the auditorium or something like that, sitting in a school lecture hall, those kinds of scenes, and just being on set, getting a feel for the way it's done in the industry is very helpful. And the more experience you have, the more you kind of understand the rhythm of how production works, and you will meet people who are making other projects.
Right. Now, a couple questions just from that. First, when you started with your internship in Florida, how did you land that? Is it you just happened to know the right person, or did you seek it out? How did that start?
two things. I wound up, I had a friend who, it was a friend of a friend's, a friend from Michigan had a friend in, his brother worked in Florida. So it was a friend of a friend situation. And then I also went to a film festival where I was able to just meet up with some other people. So I would say go to any kind of networking events that you can find in your area. Now, film production is more concentrated in production heavy places like Los Angeles, New York, and Atlanta. So if you live near those places, it's probably easier to find those events. But because of the way technology has changed, there's film production happening all over the country and all over the world right now. So you probably can find something, unless you're in an extremely rural area far from anything. You can probably find something going on somewhere within a reasonable vicinity of you that you can link up with other people who might become more connected into the industry.
Now let's talk about that for a second. When I grew up, I thought if you want to be an actor, you can do high school drama and stuff like that. And then if you really want to make it, you have to move to Hollywood. And then as I got older, I thought, oh, well, or maybe New York. And then I realized there are places like Atlanta or Vancouver, British Columbia, or London. And there's lots of hubs all throughout the world. Now you're in Michigan and you're doing films. I didn't know that was a thing. Speak to that a little bit. If you want to be involved in film production and doing the things that you've been talking about, can you do that from Kansas or from Ohio or from Florida? Is that possible?
Great question. And the answer is yes, because of, again, the technology change that's changed and transformed film production. It's also transformed distribution. Now you can, from wherever you are, you can make a movie and you can distribute it on YouTube, on Amazon Prime. You can get it out there on streaming platforms that the entire world has access to. Now, with that being said, your chances of getting into bigger projects improve if you're involved in a more production heavy location, I would say, such as Atlanta, New York, or Los Angeles. But you can make a film from anywhere. And I do some of both. I make films here in Michigan because Michigan is where I grew up, and this is where I have just a lot of connections. It's a little bit less expensive to make movies here than it would be to make them in New York or in Los Angeles. So I like to produce here, but then I also frequent New York City as well as Los Angeles as much as I can, just to stay connected, because that's where a lot of the industry decisions are made.
Okay. Now, again, here's my ignorance coming into the film industry. As I grew up, I thought if you want to be a movie star, there's one avenue to that. You become a great actor and then someone discovers you and you make it. However, there are tons of different roles in being involved in film. I know you've directed, you've produced, you've done a lot of other things. Can you talk about some of the other kinds of jobs that exist in the film industry?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there's a whole team of people that make a film happen. It's not just an actor and just a director. So the key roles that we have are, obviously, you've got actors and directors, but then we have producers. Producers, the difference between a producer and a director shepherds the creative vision of the film. The producer shepherds more of the organizational and practical side of the film project. So they're organizing things, getting people on the team. It's kind of like a general contractor for a construction project. They hire the plumber, they hire the electrician, they hire, the framing guys, they hire the roofer. So that's another aspect. That's, if you kind of like business and organizational stuff, that's an aspect of the film industry. There's wardrobe people who make costumes, fine costumes. There's makeup artists, hairstylists. There's production designers, people who make props and do set dressing, figure out what the things in the background of the shot are going to look like, what needs to be there. There's what we call gaffers, which are the lighting guys, essentially lighting girls, who set up lights and figure out how to light a scene, which is very important in film. The reason why the movies you watch in the theater look so different than the stuff you shoot in your iPhone. It's not, well, the camera quality is obviously better with those projects, but the lighting is done so much more precisely and carefully, and they've got fog in the background and things like that. So there's an endless amount of creativity that can be done with lighting. It's a really, really fun aspect of film production. So there's lots of other roles that fit into film creation. And then after the fact, there's editors, visual effects artists, and people involved with distribution. There's entertainment law, people who do legal contract work for films. So there's a lot of ways you can be involved in the film industry without being an actor or director.
Now, so it's funny, as you were talking about lighting, I'm looking at myself on the camera. I'm like, oh no, I don't have my light kit here. And I have a shiny head right now because I have light coming in from above and the windows. At home, I have a light kit. So even people who are doing simple stuff like YouTube, you can start developing these skills at home. You can start working at lighting. You can do makeup, and you can learn a lot of these things. Actually, on YouTube, you can learn a lot of these skills, at least some of the basics, which is really cool. Now, Daniel, I know a bit about you because I've followed your work for a while now. I know that you've acted in movies, you've directed, you've produced, but what I'm most interested in is you are really heavily involved in a lot of film projects in developing the story. And I want to talk to you a little bit about storytelling. What has been your experience with either screenwriting or just being involved in the writing process, and how that comes, what that process is like and how it comes to the screen?
Well, good question. Well, obviously, the foundation of any project is the script. So it's very important you have a great script, you have a chance of making a great film. If you have a weak script, the chances of making a great film go exponentially down. So the process of storytelling, I'd say that my first piece of advice for anyone trying to make any kind of content, telling any kind of story would be this: figure out what your basic theme is. So what is your main idea? Is that's the first question any storyteller needs to decide, because everything will build on that theme forward. A few months ago, I was actually in Nashville at a meeting with a gentleman named Eric Smith. He is he's an advertising executive at Facebook, and he was talking about the way the news feed of social media has changed advertising and really changed our lives. The idea used to be that you would kind of put forward a teaser, get people interested, and then reveal your grand big idea. And he said, that's not the way it works anymore. He says, people don't have an 8-minute attention span. The attention span that people have right now is a fraction of a second. So you have 1 second to get their attention. So whatever your main idea is, it needs to come out immediately. So from a very, very short video from advertising or something on YouTube, or trying to communicate something on social media in a news feed, to even making a feature film or a TV series, figure out what your main idea is. That would be the biggest piece of storytelling advice I could offer to begin with.
Cool. Now, on the projects that you've worked on, are any of the stories, so the films that you've shot, are any of those stories yours? Are any of those your original ideas?
Good question. You know what? So far, I've mainly been working with other people in developing scripts. I can actually show you. So this is my fancy way of developing scripts. This is my closet door, and this is how I develop a script right here. And this is anyone can do this, but this is some things I've actually, believe it or not, these are actually some tips I've learned from Will Smith's one of his script writing consultants, a guy named Dr. Stan Williams. He has a great book out called The Moral Premise, but he walks you through the technical aspects of what makes a good story. And so what I do is I use these sticky notes, and this is Colt at school getting a call. I was writing part of a comic book for a spinoff from a new movie we just wrapped up with Dean Cain, actually, called Skydog. And the way I don't actually usually write the stories, but I'm always involved with helping develop the story, like how the plot is going to go. And so I literally use my closet door. Let me back up a little bit. On the top here, it says opening image, and then it goes down around the side, down to the bottom here without dropping my computer, down to the bottom, and then back up to the top, which is, so I've got my opening image here, and then I have closing image over here. And these two things should have some direct correlation with story. And then the way kind of the storytelling formula that I use comes from a lot of different Hollywood script experts that lead you through a typical hero's journey: life before, initiating incident, rejection of the journey, accepting the journey, crosses the threshold, your hero enters a new environment, no progress because they use the wrong methods, and then down here at the bottom, they what we call sometimes in film is either the pinch or the moment of grace. This is where the hero kind of accepts the journey. Enemy closes in, near-death experience, all is lost, dark night of the soul, final incident, hand-to-hand fight to the death, victory or defeat, your resurrection beat, and then your denouement, which is kind of that, usually that area after the war moment, but before the story ends. So I do a lot of work with story development. I don't usually write them. I feel I'm more of a story consultant as opposed to writer. Writing is really a gift, writing good dialogue and figuring all that out. But kind of the science of what makes a story interesting is something that's always fascinated me. And it's something that's really fascinated me as I've gotten more involved in filmmaking to see what goes into story development.
Yeah. Well, interesting for me to see that, because when you talk about the hero's journey or different story arcs, that's important in film, but it's also important for short things like on YouTube. It's also important for marketing and business. It's also important for personal branding and awareness. And so, I read William Goldman's Which Lie Did I Tell? He's a screenwriter that did The Princess Bride. And I couldn't believe how useful his book was for me in business, because it just talks about how to tell a good story. And I do that all the time, even though I'm not doing it in film.
Absolutely. Just real quick, let me just say, I think these ideas are helpful in writing and other aspects besides just screenwriting for movies or TV. It's helpful for journalism, writing novels, books, short stories, articles for social media. These concepts can all be very helpful. So sorry, go ahead.
No, well, so I'm just thinking about our audience here. They're stuck at home during this pandemic. They're looking to develop new skills. What would be your advice to kids that are at home in how to write a better story, how to develop better ideas, maybe before they even look at going into the film industry, but just developing their own ideas? What can they be doing right now to do that?
Oh, excellent question. Well, I would say two things: figure out a writing device and then get your phone. Write down some kind of a concept. What I talked about before, figure out some kind of main idea. We're going to write a little video for social media. We want to have one big laugh at the end where, we communicate something special or some kind of comedic thing or some kind of little plot twist, whether it's a real short project. And then grab your phone, shoot it, figure out something, write something that you can film either in your house or in your yard or where you live, or maybe at the park, wherever you can go right now you can get to that's not under lockdown during COVID apocalypse, and make your project and then put it out on maybe your social media channels, and then get feedback, and then learn from that feedback, get better, have another idea, hopefully make a better film, and keep doing it again and again and again. Something that I've seen in Hollywood, you look at any famous director right now, and they all have vastly different stories and make very different projects, everyone from Robert Rodriguez to Steven Spielberg. And what they all have in common is one thing: they all made movies with their friends as kids. So I would say the best thing you can do is just get out there and make something with your phone.
That's awesome. Well, Daniel, I think I could talk to you all day long, but I'm aware of your time. We'll put a wrap on this. If kids want to learn more about you and what projects you're working on, where should they go?
Pretty much any social media channel, be it Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. My social media handle is Daniel Knudsen, my name, and then my initials DK. My last name is spelled Knudsen. So Daniel Knudsen DK, and you can find me on all these different platforms. So yes, please connect up.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Daniel.
Hey, thank you.